So in regards to genetic entropy, it appears that this degeneration we see, it puts shelf lives on genomes and organisms.
Correct.
And that points us to a young genome at the end of the day.
That's exactly what happens. Now, of course, we see from geochronometers, study of what's in the ground, the layers in the ground. So everywhere we look, we actually see the science to prove that the Earth and the universe are very young. In fact, only a few thousand years old. When I first started teaching on this, we had about roughly 200. However, today we have over 350, because the more we learn, the more we find out arguments that disprove evolution scientifically. On my website at creationworldview.org, I have over 150 what are called shorts in tech world. These are videos that are less than 5 minutes long, most of them less than a minute and a half. Some up to 5 minutes, but have maybe 2 arguments, but every one of them has at least 1 argument showing that, in fact, the Earth, the universe, solar system, galaxy are all young. Whether it's the lumpy rings around planets, or the heat loss of the moon, the heat loss of the Earth, the recession rate of the moon from the Earth, the rotation of the sun, barred spiral galaxies. It doesn't matter where you look. You find these scientific arguments that refute evolutionary time. You have to remember that evolutionists believe in infinite time, but they believe it by faith. There's no proof for it whatsoever.
Well, it looks like they look to time as their God, but it seems like even with infinite time, you can give them trillions and trillions of years. What we see is extinction. So it seems like time actually makes things worse for them. It seems to be the enemy of their story.
Well, to them, time is the hero of the plot.
Right.
Their God is random chance.
Yes.
But they require infinite time for their God of random chance to accomplish what they believe has occurred by random chance. And they live by 8 words. It's the evolutionary mantra to go with their religion, which is give me enough time and anything can happen. As you pointed out, that is a fallacious argument, because given enough time, there's lots of things that would never, ever happen. Everybody listening has at some time, I believe, probably, played some innocent board game like Monopoly, Trivial Pursuit, and you've thrown a pair of dice. Now, question, have you ever seen anybody throw a fair pair of dice 27 times, getting the number 7 27 times in a row?
Never.
And you never will. It's a mathematical impossibility. You could throw the dice 1 billion times a second for 1 trillion supposed years. You'd never get the number 7 27 straight times in a row. It will never happen. But that is infinitesimally smaller than the possibility that rocks can become alive by random chance.
Right. I completely agree.
If I may, you mentioned extinction. What
Yes.
many people don't realize is extinction is a proof for creation. Think with me for a moment. Evolution says you start off with a single cell. Now, you will have arguments between evolutionists. Was it one single cell, or were there different single cells that somehow or another evolved into existence? The difference between a tree of life and many bushes. But the fact of the matter is, they all believe that somewhere along the line, a living cell came into existence by random chance, that it then differentiated. It learned how to divide, reproduce, etc., become a multiple cell creature, which ultimately evolved into people as the highest evolved form of life. Now, if evolution were true, we would have this branching process, this tree of life, the dendritic pattern of evolutionary belief. But if creation is true, the creator started it in the past with a certain number. Now, whether it's 1 million, 2 million, 3 million kinds, we don't know, because we're continuing to find new ones. So we don't know how many, but he would have started with a certain number. And he says that that's all he made. He didn't make any more. Now, if creation is true, you have only 2 options. Either as life progresses over time, you maintain the same number, or if any of them become extinct, you have fewer and fewer kinds over time. When one looks scientifically at what we're experiencing today, what is the single greatest fear that evolutionists have? It's extinction. They now realize that life forms are becoming extinct, that they want to preserve larger and larger bio areas to preserve these living organisms that are becoming extinct over time. Now, mind you, the number of extinctions at the moment I think is highly exaggerated, but nonetheless, extinctions are occurring. So let's think about this. If evolution was true, first of all, we would have new kinds appearing all the time. If evolution was true, we wouldn't worry about them becoming extinct because, according to evolutionists, that just means that they're inferior and being replaced by superior kinds. And therefore, that would be a part of the evolutionary process and they would welcome it. Instead, the environmental terrorists are absolutely aghast at this, in fact, extinction process going on today where we have fewer and fewer kinds. They're not willing to admit it, but that is a proof for creation and disproves evolution.
Awesome answer. I agree with every point you're saying. What would be, because you mentioned, kinds there, created kinds, what would be the best way to define, say, what a Genesis kind is, Dr. Grady?
Well, of course, creationists have tried to define it in a better way. Think about it for just a moment, if I may. It was a creation-believing scientist, Linnaeus, Swede, who came up with basically the modern way in which we categorize creatures, with slight modifications since he started, but the basic two-word Latin terminologies, for genus, species, the whole taxonomy of starting with phylums, kingdoms and phylums and classes, etc. And that was actually a system that was invented by a creation-believing scientist. He was a Christian. And it allows us to pigeonhole creatures. This is a cat, this is a dog. And that is also a proof for creation and refutes evolution. Again, if evolution was true and things were changing slowly and gradually over time from one kind to another, what we would have is simply a mush of things changing over time, but you would never have a distinct kind that you could label as a cat, a dog, a cow. So first of all, the fact that we can pigeonhole creatures is a proof of creation and refutes evolution. Secondly, when we take a look at what the Bible calls kind. Now, evolutionists, of course, like to ridicule the Bible. They'd like to say that there's no science in it. The fact of the matter is, I have cataloged over 1,000 verses of the Bible that deal with the concept of creation, accurately describe various scientific laws, natural processes, physical evidence. However, they criticize the Bible. And for example, they would say, oh, you can't possibly believe that there was an Ark of Noah. You can't possibly believe that he brought all these animals through the flood. You can't possibly believe that there, was a pair of poodles and a pair of German shepherds and a pair of dachshunds on the Ark. And I would agree, because nature would never produce a poodle in the first place. So what do we have? Well, we have kinds. Now, going back to the Hebrew, the verb bara is used only of God and speaks of divine creation. People cannot bara. There are other verbs in Hebrew used in Genesis chapter 1 and on. Asa, yatsar, which means to form, yatsar to form, like a potter with clay can take a lump of clay and form a vessel. Asa means to assemble from previously existing materials, such as how we assemble a car from previously existing materials. Bara means to speak into existence where there was nothing previously, and mass and energy come into existence because God's sovereign. So the word bara means create. Now, the word kind in Hebrew is min, M-I-N, in English. And so creation scientists talk about the bara min, the created kind. Now, what that means is that God created one pair of dogs with enough genetic information to get all the different kinds of dogs we have today. One pair of cats with all the genetic information to get all the different kinds of cats we have today. Now, Creation was approximately 6,000 years ago. The Bible is very specific that exactly 1,656 years after creation was Noah's flood. Now, because of human sin, everything in the universe, and the Apostle Paul even talks about this. He says that the farthest atom in the entire universe from the earth was affected by human sin, that one sin made a perfect universe imperfect. And so for 1,656 years, everything was suffering decay. However, again, that decay was much less as a rate than it is today. So at the time of the flood, God knows. And what does he do? He picks the male dog and female dog that has the least corrupted genetic information still remaining, sends them to Noah, because it says in the Bible that while Noah was given the blueprints by God and he built the ark, that God sent the animals to him, because Noah wouldn't know that. And so God looks at the creatures, says this has the least decayed information available, and he sends them to Noah. Now, what is particularly interesting is that hybridization experiments that have been done in just the last recent years has proven all cats on Earth are related. And if you, in small increments, go from a house cat to a lynx to a servile up through jaguar, you can actually get to a lion, and you can go right back down again, as long as you do it in small increments. The same thing is true of horses, dogs, doesn't matter. You start with a Heinz 57 dog. And I would like to ask you and the audience a question. Let us say that you take a Heinz 57 dog, and I hope everybody understands what I'm talking about there, and you want to get a Great Dane. Now, a Great Dane is a big dog, and it has very long legs, right? Question. Do you add the information for long legs to the Heinz 57 dog to get the Great Dane, or do you eliminate the genes for short legs?
It sounds like you would eliminate the genes.
Correct answer. That means that the Great Dane has less genetic information in it than the Heinz 57 dog, because to get the Great Dane, you had to eliminate genetic information. You didn't add it, and you most assuredly didn't create it. Same thing is true if you want to get a dachshund, a dog that's a half a dog high and a dog and a half long. You take away the information for long legs, and you have nothing left but the information for short legs. Now, let us say that you wanted to take a Great Dane. Now, this is called artificial selection. This is actually what Charles Darwin was looking at in the 1800s. He saw artificial selection, where human intellect was guiding the breeding process, where humans decided which male, which female were going to mate and produce offspring. And it only takes 8 generations to get any one genetic characteristic you're intentionally breeding for. Now, once you get the Great Dane, what happens? Well, purebred humans make sure that the Great Danes only breed with Great Danes to keep the line pure and to keep the appearance of the dog exactly the same, basically, correct?
Correct.
Now, let us say that now you wanted to go from the Great Dane back to the Heinz 57 dog. What would you have to do it? Well, slowly, gradually over time, you would have to take smaller legged females, breeding them to add back in the information that was removed to begin with.
Yes.
Again, you're not creating it, you're simply adding it back, having already taken it away. And so again, nothing new has been created, nothing new has been added, other than to put the information back that's taken out.